Hello and welcome to Sacred MINDSHIFT CIRCLE podcast, and I'm your host, Dolly Deborah Donald. Today I'm joined by a writer, actress, and entrepreneur. She has published 3 books, 2 of which are a collection of poems and short stories. And the one we'll be discussing today, Savvy Survival, for women starting over alone later in life. Let's give a warm welcome to Caroline Sposto.
Hello.
Hi, Caroline. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Pretty good. So, Caroline, I saw your book and I was interested in it because I saw the title and it says, for women starting over, especially alone later in life. I'm 40 years old. A lot of people might not guess that. And it's very interesting because I think when you reach your midlife, you start to you know yourself a little bit better and you start to make different decisions and choose different things and you want to break out of old cycles. And I just thought it was very interesting because I feel like a lot of women can relate. Can you give me a little bit of background as to where did this idea come from for this book? And is there any experiences that you had that helped you decide to write it?
Yes, the book came about because experiences I had kind of forced me to start over alone, as the book title might indicate. I was in my early 50s. I had been married for 25 years. The 2 daughters were grown and off to the colleges they wanted to go to. Pardon me. I thought everything was great. From my perception, life was great. We had the stereotypical American dream with the house and the nice cars in the garage and the whole bit. And meanwhile, there were a couple things going on behind the scenes that I did not know about at that time. One of which, my mother was still alive at that time. And the family I grew up in, alcoholism ravaged that family. And toward the end of her life, a couple of my brothers got her power of attorney and financially just cleaned out everything. The family house I grew up in, anything I might have inherited, and all the goodwill with the relatives, it was all gone. And so when my mother passed away, I had to pay for her funeral, and it was just a nightmare. The state came and seized our family home and seized all the belongings in it and sold them at auction. It was humiliating and it was devastating. Meanwhile, the man I had been married to for 25 years, I didn't know it, but he had someone on the side, and they were kind of making plans behind the scenes. And so, long story short, I ended up financially and materially completely out in the cold very quickly. And I think sometimes when God will open a door for us that we wouldn't open for ourselves, because I wouldn't have chosen to start over by myself. But in hindsight, did I really want to be around people who would cheat me or cheat on me? Were the material things that we had more important than my integrity, maybe exploring my talents, having a different relationship with my daughters as they grew into their adulthood? Maybe not. So, that's not how I reacted at first. Of course, I reacted with a lot of sorrow, a lot of self-pity, some anger, all of that mixed into a sloppy mess. And getting back to who I really am, starting my life over, doing what I want to do, was as much a spiritual journey, I think, as a logistical one. And so about 5 years into it, I realized that I had really successfully at least gotten the pieces of my life lined up and was putting them together in a way I liked. I was in an airport catching a plane to New York City. Both of my daughters lived there at the time. And I was, you know how we do when we're waiting somewhere, we tend to, or many of us tend to, take out our phone and scroll our Facebook feed or something. So I was scrolling the Facebook feed, and a meme with Toni Morrison's words on it popped up, and it said, if there's a book that you need to read, but it hasn't been written, then you must write it. And that saying just hit me between the eyes, because in the aftermath of my losing everything and having to start over, I looked for books. And I didn't look in the Bible, but I looked for other books that I thought would be helpful for me. And I couldn't find a book that I could relate to. There were these aggressive divorce books, and frankly, I didn't even get a divorce lawyer because I really just wanted my husband to straighten up, fly right, and come back home. And that didn't happen. And so, but not having legal representation was not financially good for me, but it's it's the way I played the hand I was dealt. There were books that had a lot of psychology in it, but I felt those were that wasn't what I needed either. And there were all kinds of books. There were financial books and books about your children, and none of them were a book that I needed. I felt like I needed a playbook. I'm in the middle of the game, starting over in the middle of the game, and suddenly the scoreboard is down. What's my playbook here? And so that's what I wrote. I wrote a playbook. I started it about 5 years before it came out. I started it right on that plane ride, actually. And it took a while to write the book, to organize my thoughts, turn it into what I want. And meanwhile, I've been working full time and doing a lot of other things. So the book was slow in getting put together, but when it was the way I wanted it, I was just glad I had the book that I had needed to read at the time, and I hope other women might find it worthwhile. And I think a good teacher can save you a lot of time. So with a book like this, I'm hoping other women in similar situations or similar mindsets will waste less time than I wasted getting their lives moving forward.
Okay, so exactly when you say that you needed a playbook, tell me a little bit more about how your book is a playbook and very different from the other kinds of books that you normally find for women who are divorcing, because it's about reinvention, correct? Like for women?
It is, and we go step by step. The first chapters are about getting through the initial negative feelings, because that's a process in itself. There are journaling exercises to help us understand the lies that we tell ourselves, or the lies that the enemy tells us, so that we can realize the truth about ourselves. And I don't use the phrase reinvent yourself, because I feel that by midlife we have already been invented, and I think everything we need was put into us when we were put here on this earth. Now, that's not to say that we don't need to acquire skills and education and experience, but our inherent talents and desires, I think, are innate within us. So I have exercises, it's called Rediscover You, where we look within ourselves instead of looking outside. Instead of saying, oh, I'm going to get a makeover and change my hair. You can do that, but that's not going to change who you are. And we don't want to envy other people. We want to appreciate ourselves. So it's a discovery process. I read a book. It's a very good book. It's called The Confidence Code. And it was a study done not too long ago where they followed young girls and realized that boys and girls, when they're little, have the same amount of self-confidence. And then around puberty, the girls suddenly have less self-confidence than the boys. And that trait is carried with girls and women throughout their lives for the most part. And I think there are reasons for that. Our society, the roles that we're taught to be in, and also our lives change more than men's lives do. They just do, especially if we have children. And we're socialized to kind of rise to whatever duties are demanded of us. While that should build our confidence, sometimes it actually takes our confidence away, because we forget to look for, oh, what do I want? What can I do really? So once we get through that process of kind of rediscovering ourselves, we learn things, and then my book goes on to give people the confidence and the tools they need to look at those, like the skills that they've dusted off, or as in the Langston Hughes poem, what happens to a dream deferred? We all had dreams when we were young. Well, what happened to those dreams? Why don't we take midlife as an opportunity to revisit them?
Do you think that by the time you reach your midlife around 40 or 45, that for most women that there's a lot of fear around following your dreams, or just, you know, changing a lot of the things in your life to pursue your dreams? Do you think that that's a big issue?
I think so. I mean, when I was 40 to 53, when all of this happened, In hindsight, I don't know that I was as happy as I thought I was. I was living a lot for other people, very concerned about other people's opinions. What do my children think? What does my mother-in-law think? What does my mother think? What do the neighbors think? And on and on. And certainly, what does my husband think? And on and on and on. And my circumstances gave me the permission to decide that it didn't matter what anybody else thinks, within reason. But I think, yeah, I think we women need to be aware that we are in a society that's very critical of women, and a society that's very apt to blame mothers for a lot of things that mothers don't need to be blamed for. And so in that way, this book can also help women remember that they have more power if they step into it. But you got to step into your power. If you don't claim it, nobody is going to do that for you.
And in terms of like being judged and receiving criticism, you can base it off of your experience as well, or your friends' experiences. What do you think are some of the most common judgments and criticisms that women in their midlife face when they try to, start over? And how should they take that first big step?
Well, I think that sadly, we live in a society that where the economy runs on selling lots of stuff. And the way that stuff is sold, especially to women, is to make us feel inadequate and make us think that we would be happier if we just looked a little different. If we lost those stubborn 10 pounds, if we did this, if we looked a little younger, this, that, and the other. And while I believe we have to take great care of this one and only body that we have to carry ourselves through life, we have to appreciate and celebrate our health instead of nitpicking ourselves. But also, there's a chapter called Ignoring the Inner Imp, because imp is the first word in imposter. And I think we often, if we've lost our self-confidence, we think, oh, I could never do that. I'm too old to do this. Who am I to think I could do this or that? And we kind of forget that we have to just be willing to blunder through, be willing to not be very good at something, because that's possibly what's going to happen before we get good at it. And that's totally okay. Imagine if a baby was trying to learn to walk, and the first time it fell down, it decided, oh, I'm no good at walking. I just can't do this. None of us would be walking around. So we have to remember that, babies are unfazed by being horrible at things like walking and talking, but they just persist and happily persist at that and keep going and make progress. And before you know it, they're where they need to be. And that consistency is really all it takes. Consistency and self-forgiveness and a lot of faith. And I'm a woman of faith. I'm not religious in that I want to convert people to my beliefs, though I respect organized religions in all of their forms. But I compare faith to, if you walk into a building that you've never been in before, and you need to get to a certain floor, you step into an elevator and you push the button. Unless you have a real problem with elevators, you're not going to be thinking, what does the floor I'm going to look like? What is that floor going to be? How soon are we going to get to that floor? Oh, what about the floor that I just left? And you don't go through any of that. You just walk into the elevator and you trust that it will bring you where you're supposed to be, and the doors will open and you'll be where you belong. And when you walk out of those elevator doors, whatever it actually looks like will be fine. And I think faith is like that. As God takes us through life, we have to have that same comfort, that same belief that yes, we have to do our part. You have to walk into the elevator. You have to push the button. If you have faith and you want something, yes, you have to do the work, but you also have to be bold enough to step out. That okay, if you knock on a door and that door doesn't open, you go and knock on the next door, or you find an alternative way around, and that's when faith will bring you to that. Pardon me. I think the enemy is what will get us discouraged, and we have to remember that we can't let that inner voice discourage us. We have to let it encourage us.
Yeah, and a lot of times I also think that when women reach a certain age, some of the other ideas are or criticisms are like, well, you should have had this ready by now. You should have been financially completely secured by now. Like a lot of criticisms of that nature. And when you are just fed up with a lot of things in your life and you're just ready to make those changes and let go of everything, it can be scary, and people will think that sometimes that you're just out of your league there. But like you said, a lot of times it's just thinking that everything is going to work out. Everything is going to work out because, on the other hand, because you are that age, you already know yourself to some degree for the most part. You have the experience, you have a lot of wisdom that has come through dealing with a lot of other people. So I feel that at the same time, they're like pros and cons, right? But like I said, if you have faith, more than anything, you're going to be able to manage it. When you face something, for example, is in your experience like you had a situation where you had to deal with infidelity as an issue? A lot of women have this happening to them, especially not even just older women, younger women, every woman. How do you not let something like that affect your sense of self-worth?
Well, I mean, I think it will affect your sense of self-worth at first if you're a normal woman, and not just in ways. This woman, the first woman in all of this drama was younger. Um, of course, it affected my self-worth, but only to a point. And you have to just understand that, okay, you know what? Do you know how long she gets to be 21? For exactly 1 year. And that's how long I was 21, for example. But also we understand that we bring other things to the table. I think the harder thing when it comes to infidelity is, in hindsight, we connect the dots and we see all of the clues that we ignored. We saw them without seeing them. It was like our hand was over our face deliberately, probably to protect our emotions. And when all is said and done, and there's no more denying it, we remember different things where, oh my goodness, those clues were pretty obvious. But we have to move forward and understand that what happened when it comes to infidelity, it's a reflection on the person, I think, who broke their marriage vows and lied to us more than it is on us. But by the same token, I think we do ourselves a disservice in any situation, even if we were wronged, to think that we deserve sainthood and we were perfect in every way. So we have to do an honest self-reflection and look and say, okay, were there ways in which I played a part in the demise of my marriage, or in the demise of that friendship, or in the demise of my career, whatever it is? We do have to look at things that we could do better next time, not to beat ourselves up, but to say, okay, next time, if I'm in another marriage, what are some things that I need to do differently? Will I have to insist on more open communication? Will I have to, whatever it is, if that makes sense.
Do you recommend that women, after starting over and leaving a divorce, after they've gotten themselves together, do you still encourage women to seek other relationships? Or because a lot of women just say, well, I'd rather just be alone by now. I've done it all. I'm done. I'm done with all of that. And sometimes some women will say, like, they want to spend the time in their last years to kind of focus more on them and build themselves up, and that's like a distraction. What would you say?
I would say that I would not recommend, after a long marriage and the end of it, I would not recommend jumping right into another relationship for a couple of years. I don't think there's anything wrong with, platonic coffee dates if you want some male company, or having some male platonic friends. I think it's fine to want to date again. Right now I'm living in Mexico City. I'm moving back to New York in another couple of months. When I was in New York City, I was dating someone there, and I wasn't on the dating apps or pursuing someone. I think I just happened to meet someone. And there's a whole chapter on my opinion about meeting men, and also the cautions, because when I first started even thinking about dating again a couple years after the divorce, and I'm 10 years out of my divorce now, I felt like I was in a foreign country navigating this foreign bazaar with currency that I didn't even understand, because it's changed so much. I know women who've had great success meeting people on the apps. I think if you possibly can, if you want to meet someone, if you can possibly meet men in person, I think it's a better choice. Examine your values and figure out, go where the people are. Like the military calls an area a target rich zone. Go to a target rich zone. A friend of mine wanted to meet men, and so she started a book club with books about World War II. Hello, in my age, who do you think is going to join that book club? Age appropriate men. So that who also liked history. So I thought that was a pretty clever one. Just be receptive. You have to go out looking nice, be receptive, and you've got to start noticing men. Find an excuse to say hello, or if you're in a museum and a man the right age who is by himself is looking at a painting, go stand over there and look at the painting too. Eventually somebody will say something. But I think men will always notice an attractive woman. And if you keep yourself up and think about, the right age range for men that you want to meet, go where the fun is. And let your friends know. If you're ready to meet someone, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, not in a desperate way, because people might know somebody that they would love to introduce you to, but they don't know that you'd like the idea. So that's
And
my take.
also, yeah, and also, in regards to as you get older, I think the dynamics, at least for me, I have maybe one friend at this point. Like I don't have a whole big circle, and I think that that's pretty normal sometimes, because I figure you start to really evaluate your relationships and see what works for you, what doesn't. Do you think that it's important to have a larger social circle to at least have connections, or what do you suggest for a lot of women? Because I think that after dealing with in-laws and sisters-in-law and all this, like I am happy more solitary, and sometimes just hanging out with like one or two friends that have been with me along the way for a long time.
Well, nothing will replace those friends. I agree. I think if you're solitary by choice, by preference, and that's really where and how and why you're happiest, that's fine. I don't think it's healthy to be solitary because you have been disappointed by people. And so you're shutting yourself off, because that's a different type of being solitary. And I don't think that gets us where we need to go. I tend to be a very social person a lot of the time. I like to be involved in theater. I was in a play in New York at the Orbach Center before I left New York. When you're in a play, you meet the cast, you walk out of the theater, you meet the people that saw the play. Here in Mexico City, I would feel very isolated if I didn't socialize some. So I belong to a writers group, and we meet at a coffee shop on Thursdays, and we sit around and write and work on our projects just to make friends. I don't know. What I do is I look at socializing the same way I look at my health, because I think it's part of your health. And at the beginning of each week, I look at my calendar and I say, okay, what am I going to do for exercise? And what am I going to do for my social life? And I make sure that I have one or two social engagements on my calendar every week, even if it's just a cup of coffee with my neighbor, because a lot of my interests are a little bit solitary too, and I don't want to get too solitary. So I think there's a balance. But I just don't believe in being solitary because people have hurt you. So.
Okay, so not like shutting down and like hiding away like a hermit. No.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that might be okay for a week or two, but then again, then we've got to get out some.
So tell us a little bit about the book that you're writing right now that's due to come out maybe around January. You said you have another book that's about to come out. Can you tell us about it?
I do, yes. The business that I started long ago, 8 years ago now, is called Savvy Civility. And what the business itself is, I have pools of actors in different cities, and the actors work in universities helping to teach bedside manner to students in medical fields, because I think that's very important, and the schools do too. So that's the business that I operate. It's kind of a staffing business in that way. The book itself is also called Savvy Civility because it's also about communication. I'm certified to teach etiquette, and I have taught it, but not, I don't believe in the white gloves and party manners, prissy etiquette. I believe in genuine warmth, genuine strength, genuine connection, consideration, courtesy. And I feel that between the time that the world shut down during the pandemic and the convenience of remote communication, and the draw that these devices and computers have on the pull they have for our minds and often our emotions too, has made our social skills deteriorate. And I think we're seeing some horrible examples of behavior with no decorum, no empathy, no kindness from the top down. And that angertainment that people watch, the rage culture, I mean, our society is, I think, becoming kind of toxic in so many areas, online and off. And this book is about how we have to be the change that we want to see in the world, and how much happier we all will be if we remember some of just the little nuances in life to really get along with people well. So part of it is the ABCs of some etiquette points, but not in a prissy way. And the other part is just about connecting with people.
And as far as being an entrepreneur and starting a new business, what were some of the challenges? Because I know a lot of women also, when they make big changes, they have to kind of like relearn everything, and sometimes they're changing different from a different field or a different sector. What were some of the challenges? Because you've always worked in the same field then?
Oh, no, not at all. No, and I've worked in different fields. I taught, and then during my marriage, my former husband and I had a web development company. And then when all of that, and then I also owned a retail store with another business partner for about 3 years when I was about your age, about 40. And so when the marriage and I being business partners with him went kablooey, I didn't start over with a business right away. I had to take all kinds of side jobs. But taking all of those side jobs was really educational to me. And if you're business minded, there is no job too low for you to learn some interesting things. And one of the things I did was medical acting for a university. And that brought to mind, I thought, wow, I bet smaller programs would really benefit from this too. That just stuck in my head. And then I did a lot of brand ambassador work where, if you walk into Whole Foods and somebody is handing out samples of cheese or something, I had a lot of jobs where I was doing that sampling and running around. Well, by being one of the people that worked for these marketing agencies, I was able to observe how it was run and organized. So I kind of melded the two concepts. If I could organize medical actors the way these marketing companies organize food samplers, I wonder if that would work. And during this process of all these just low-level jobs, this and that, while I was still finding myself, my youngest daughter said, "Mom, why don't you take out index cards, write down one idea a day, each on a card, and at the end of a year, you're going to have 365 ideas." And I took her advice, and I started writing ideas. And the idea of synthesizing the marketing agency with the medical acting came together that way. And so I put up a website, and I resigned from working for the other school because it was kind of a conflict of interest if I had my own. But then I just started making calls, and I was able to put this together. And 8 years later, it's still up and running. And I think the smaller programs having the level of medical actor training days that the bigger schools have has been very valuable to those programs too. So it's all worked out. So I think if you want to start a business or start over, don't be afraid to start from the bottom. Don't be afraid to you might have to reduce your standard of living. I certainly had to for a while. I don't think we can come out of a marriage and think we're going to live at the same standard of living, unless you're the breadwinner and you still have all the money. Otherwise, the best thing you can do is get real, scale down, and then if there's something new you want to do, just start wherever you start. And if you're smart and determined, you'll move up pretty fast, or you'll start your own pretty fast.
Yeah, because I imagine that sometimes people, they get discouraged and they feel like, okay, I have to start all over again from the bottom. But in the end, if you have the ambition, you can make it work and you can get back on your feet faster than you think.
Absolutely, much faster than you think. And the beautiful thing is, I found is that, and I say it in the book, you can't build a new life in the framework of the past. So the first year I was foolish. I didn't know any other way to live, so I rented a house just for myself, an entire house. I was cooking meals, I was decorating for the holidays, I was doing all the things that I had done for 25 years, but it was only me in that rented house. It was the most depressing, pointless, wasteful year I've ever spent. And once that dawned on me, I got rid of all of that and I moved in with a roommate, another divorced lady, and coming into my own yet again with a lifestyle that was very modest, some company in the house, someone else in the house, and not doing all the things that I used to do. Then I had a new framework to work with. And then I was able to say, okay, now this is a real fresh start. And what do I want really? And that was when my life took off. So I think we have to demolish the old framework. No, that's not what we're doing anymore. Let's build something else.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Caroline, for coming to Sacred Mind Shift today. And I want to remind everyone that you can find the links to her books in the podcast. And remember to subscribe to sacredmindshift.com to keep updated for the future podcasts that we have coming up and future events. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This went by fast.